Hi everybody, welcome back to my channel Bilingual Mingle. My name is Tania, and in today's video I would like to share with you our family's journey through teaching our 17-month-old son Leon both alphabets, Russian and English. If you haven't done it yet, please make sure to subscribe to my channel down below and hit the like button if you like this video. So the biggest thing that I realized I was not prepared at all in terms of raising our bilingual son was how to teach him multiple alphabets. So when he was around 9-10 months old and we started realizing that he started differentiating between different colors and shapes, we thought with my husband that it would be a good time to start introducing him individual letters from both alphabets. However, we simultaneously understood that we don't really know anything about this process and where even start. So I decided to do my own research, and during this time I came across various pieces of advice and opinions regarding how to do this, and sometimes even polar opposites opinions regarding how to do this. But I realized that till now internet and YouTube specifically is lacking a series of videos on this topic in which we would be able to trace this whole journey, let's say from day one till the time that a child almost knows two or more alphabets. So I thought that I would be interested in watching such videos, and I couldn't, and I decided to create my own series of videos on this topic. So that's going to be the first one in which I present my opinion regarding when and how to start teaching alphabets to a bilingual child based on my research that I've done. I will also would like to provide you a couple of additional strategies and resources that we found beneficial for us, and share with you a couple of very common myths that people are still sharing regarding this topic that I found interesting and want to share with you. So if you're ready, let's start. But before we start, I find it necessary to point out that those strategies that I offer in this video might work the best if the language systems that you're trying to teach your child are as different as Russian and English, which means that there is not a lot of overlapping in terms of individual letters and sounds that they produce. So if the languages that you're trying to teach your child slightly similar, then specific strategies that I offer in this video might not work the best for you, but general strategies would still be applicable. So I'm a big proponent of the theory that both alphabets should be started teaching at the same time. There are a couple of major reasons for me to have this approach. The first reason is that children should not see parents prioritizing one language over another. This is such an obvious reason. However, some people are forgetting that, and this process should be really balanced from early age, right? And since learning alphabet is a really basis of learning any language, we should start practicing this approach from the very beginning of our child's life. Children are always very sensitive to language code switchings, and they are going to always realize subconsciously when parents prioritizing or using one language more than another. The second reason why I think we should start teaching our bilingual children both alphabets at the same time is because this really helps them to acquire language learning skills that are as close as they could ever be to balanced bilingualism. Children between the ages from 0 to 3 really uniquely suited to learn a second language because their brains are based on various research, are at its most flexible stage. In fact, actually, infants as early as 6 months old are able to detect a switch between languages, and therefore we can see right that they can learn a second language even before they start walking or before they learn fully their native language. Actually, a professor, Patricia Kuhl, she's a professor in speech and hearing sciences from the University of Washington, has conducted various studies on this topic, and she concluded after those studies that infants in the age range between 6 and 8 months old are clearly hear and respond to the vowel and consonant sounds in both their language and second language that they are exposed to in their daily life. However, when they reach 1 year old mark, they completely lose this ability. In the link down below, I'm actually going to leave an article in which this research is described in more details in case you're interested to learn a little bit more about this. And I would also strongly recommend to watch a Netflix documentary. It's a really amazing documentary called Babies. They had an episode called Languages, in which actually Professor Kuhl demonstrated one of the studies that she conducted on this topic called head turn study. Basically, if I summarize it, this study, I would say that it included an infant between 6 and 8 months old sitting on his or her mom's lap, and scientists were turning on different speakers different time, and those speakers were producing some sounds in different languages. So bilingual child always turned his or her head to the sounds that are familiar to them, and it was not just one language, it was multiple languages that they were exposed to. So I would strongly recommend to watch this episode and really the whole documentary. So Professor Kuhl actually says that the baby early starts really drawing a so-called language map in their heads, and this map continues to develop and strengthen as baby hears more sounds, and eventually some sounds that are not heard anymore, they eventually kind of pruned from the brain's network. And really the same kind of process happens with bilingual children's brains. However, in this case they have to draw more than one map, and this process becomes even easier if a specific language can be identified by a certain tone, pitch, and pronunciation of each parent or caretaker. And therefore, since there's so many research and studies that already proved that for children who learn multiple languages, multiple sounds, who are exposed to them from the very young age, right, even before they're 6 months old, by start teaching them both alphabets at the same time from the very young age, we make this job for them as easy as it could ever be. And a third reason why I think it's important to introduce both alphabets at the same time to our children is that it could help acquire for them faster phonological and phonemic awareness as well as phonics, and therefore could help them to start feeling their languages very quickly. For bilingual children, it's really vital to start feeling languages they speak as soon as possible. It takes time to learn, and we want to set our children up for success and want for them to succeed in reading, right, when they start going to school. And therefore, I think that's all this learn an alphabet, learn both alphabets at the same time. They're really at the core to keep up with the game. So what is the process of teaching those two alphabets? That's actually the most logical and the most popular approach, as well as the easiest for our children to follow. So the first stage of alphabet learning is to start with letters that look the same in both languages. In Russian and English, those letters would be, for instance, A, O, M, K, T. So child does not have really any problems memorizing just a single letter that's going to be applied to both languages, and the sound of which is also can be reused in both languages. That we are right now in our family, we're at the stage of learn alphabet with Leon, definitely at stage, I would say, 1, almost moving to stage 2, and so far it works really great for him. He definitely was able already to memorize at least 5-6 letters that are common to both languages, and he can recognize it and can pronounce some of them. So the second stage of this process is to then move to letters that are specific to each language. In Russian and English, those letters, for instance, in English would be F, G, J, Z, Q, I. In Russian alphabet, it would be sh, sh, ha, e. So those letters, they are specific to each language, and therefore there would be no commonalities between two languages and between sounds that those letters produce. And this stage would be, I would say, the longest one in this process, because it would definitely take a long time for your child to learn all the letters. I would say that it's not as important to learn them as fast as possible, or in the order in which they are listed in the alphabet, as much as it's important to really make sure that our children memorize each of the letter before we proceed to the next stage of alphabet learning process. The reason for it is because really after stage number 2, there's not a lot of letters are going to be left, at least in languages like Russian and English, and therefore and since we know that this stage is the hardest one for our children to learn and go through, we should definitely kind of take it easy with them and allow them to memorize those letters as much as possible. And the third stage of this process is to start introducing and learn with our children letters that look the same in both languages, in both alphabets, but have different pronunciation. Such letters in Russian and English are, for instance, B, E, C, H, P, X. So I call them also homophones, and even though the stage would not be, I would say, as continuous as the previous one, because as I mentioned earlier, there would not be so many letters that we would have to learn. I would say it would be the most frustration stage for us and for our kids, especially because it would be very hard for them to, during the initial stages, to navigate through all those pronunciation tricks and details in both languages, especially since letters look the same way. What I found interesting and useful to share also with you regarding the stage is, for instance, when I was teaching my sister how to speak English, I was her private tutor for numerous years. I would say over 12 years we were studying English with her. I found it useful for her to kind of pay attention more to the context with which she was working, and kind of understanding based on it how those letters are going to be pronounced, because in a daily basis our children are going to rarely face certain situations in which they would just have to deal with individual sounds. It would be more likely that they would deal with text, and obviously based on the language of the text, that I'm sure it will be also easy for them to kind of understand how certain letters should be pronounced. So yeah, as I mentioned, that would be definitely the most frustrating stage of alphabet learning process. But after this stage, we could most likely conclude that our children are going to know how to name each letter in each alphabet. In this video, I also promised to share with you a couple of additional resources and tricks that we use in our family during this process. And the first one that definitely we already tried and that works for us is to let your child know that certain letters or certain alphabet belongs to one parent. What do I mean by this? Is that whenever, for instance, your child wants to study wrong alphabet with you in a language that you don't prioritize or don't use with him on a daily basis, you can just say, in my case, I say, this alphabet I don't know. Only daddy knows this alphabet. You can also apply the same approach to individual letters, for instance, those that are kind of mirrored in both languages, like for instance N and E in English and Russian, or R and Ya in also those two languages. that would be an easier way for a child to, first of all, memorize those letters, and at the same time do not make you pronounce letters that are not belong to the primary language of yours communication with him. The second method, and just really additional resources that we use, video resources. There are a bunch of videos on YouTube, educational videos where some characters, cartoon characters, teach letters to your children, and I found this kind of like a global approach when you don't just do it on your own, but also include other resources, really working for us as well, because when it's not parents who teach you something and it's kind of more in a playful kind of mode, a child is definitely going to be more prone to learn those letters and to kind of like think about them more, and not just during the time when you kind of actively teaching them to him or her. Another thing that definitely works for us, the cards, and cards with different syllables and letters. We really use them on a daily basis. We have our favorite ones with Leon that he loves for a very long time. He makes me go over them twice, and it usually takes us about 30 minutes to complete this activity, and it's another way to not just even start introducing individual sounds to him and letters, but also syllables. So it definitely works for us. There's also so-called kind of like a handbook with alphabet with actually both alphabets, Russian and English. And this book, also I'm gonna leave the link down below. This book allows our son to be exposed to both alphabets and both languages at the same time. And even though it sounds like a very, again, easy approach to use, that's an absolutely different type of skills and type of exercise that he undergoes during this time, because really at this time he is exposed to two language systems simultaneously, and I definitely believe and see how it influences his understanding of individual letters, of individual sounds, and of both languages. And it's really interesting to observe how he does this, how he reads this book with me and with my husband. For instance, with me, he points at them objects that he knows how they are pronounced and he can recognize in the speech in Russian. So those are certain objects, like in my case it's a fire truck, it's potty, it's a bathtub. However, when he's with my husband, he points at absolutely different objects, and those objects that are not interconnected and do not overlap really, and he points at them, and that means that those letters and also those words he knows, particularly in English. So it's a very interesting set of skills that you can observe him applying during this time. Another thing that I read about but haven't really had a chance to practice as much as I wish I could are puzzles. A lot of resources that I've read really pointed out that puzzles as a great way to kind of practice doing with your bilingual child, because puzzles really definitely strengthen our vocabulary, shapes, colors, animals, transportation, all those different objects usually introduced in puzzles, and they can also help our children with expressive language, with receptive language, and definitely those all skills, as I mentioned, are beneficial to any kid. However, based on our experience, Leon was really not into puzzles, but I think it's just he didn't reach the stage when he would start being interested in them. So I think that in the next video, I might share with you my experience of dealing with puzzles with him. And the last resource that I could recommend are going to be rhyme books. And till recently, we haven't really thought with my husband about what type of books our child prefers the most. And once we start kind of discussing his favorite books before he goes to sleep, and kind of his books that he prefers to pick really just throughout the day, we came to the conclusion based on the selection that those are rhyme books. And I believe that this is because first of all, children like rhyme books in general, because they provide a certain intonation, certain rhythm, certain kind of maybe play with words that you would not meet in the book that is not rhymed, right? However, at the same time, I think, based again of Leon's reaction to those books, I think that he also is able to differentiate between intonations, between tones, between those particular things that belong to one language better when he hears rhyme book being read by me or my husband. In the end of this video, I would like to share with you a couple of very common myths regarding how to teach and when to start teaching both alphabets to bilingual children that I would like to discuss and present my opinion about. The first one that I came across really often during my research, that people recommend to teach one letter a week. In my opinion, based on our experience, that is a very slow pace, especially for children who are learning both alphabets at the same time, and it definitely would not allow them to be proficient with both languages and to know both alphabets by the time they start going to kindergarten or pre-K. What I would recommend to do instead is to teach letters in groups, like I offered in first part of my video, and kind of continue review old letters and simultaneously introduce your children to new ones. This way the pace is going to be really good, and this way child also has a chance not to just new information, but also to repeat old letters and sounds that they learned earlier. The second myth that again is very common, but I think is absolutely not useful, is that we need to only teach one sound per letter. And I think based on the stages that I described earlier, you can already assume that I'm not really a proponent of such theory, because it's going to just take too long. We're trying to kind of oversimplify things sometimes too much for children, and this way we kind of like undermining really their bilingualism at this time. They're much smarter than we think in the majority of cases, and what I recommend to do instead is to really tell students that there are letters, and certain letters represent various sounds, right? So that's what we are really doing at stage 3 of our alphabet learning process. So this way child is going to kind of like start creating in their heads the groups of letters, right? Those that sound absolutely different in both languages, those that sound similar, and those that could have various sounds. I think this approach and this learning process is much easier to later navigate and use by our children than just individual letter and individual sound for this letter. And the last myth, it's not very common, but I think it was more common in the past, especially when I was learning English as a second language, is that we need to teach alphabet in the order that it's written, right, in books. I found it very not useful, even based on my own experience of learning English alphabet, because for a very long time I couldn't first of all remember the the sound of the letter, and also could not remember really how letter is spelled until I kind of sing the song in my head, A, B, C, D, E, F, G, and get to the letters that I needed in this during this time. So for me, it was absolutely not beneficial, and I think that it becomes even more confusing for children who learn both alphabets at the same time, because obviously the alphabets that they're learning are going to have a various amount of letters in them, and therefore it's going to be too many songs to learn, and really for no reason, and that kind of like, I think, even restricts our children in their ability to again navigate in their head over kind of through different letters that they're dealing with. Instead, I recommend to teach the letters in the order that they kind of based on the commonality of those letters in words. Those letters that we need to start with, because we are trying to teach alphabet in order for our children to start reading, right? And obviously, if we teach them most commonly used letters, they're going to be able to read more words from the very beginning. So yeah, this approach definitely works, and I would recommend to follow it. So in the end, I would like to underline that the most important thing in this process is going to be repetition. Repetition is really a key to success, and nothing is more rewarding and nothing is better than to see your child start recognizing letters, sounds that you've been teaching him for a very long time, to start pronouncing first words, especially those words that you've been teaching him for a long time. So if you find this video, those tricks, resources, and my opinion that I present for you useful, or if you'd like to share with us your personal journey of teaching your child both alphabets, please leave your comments down below, and I can't wait to see you in my next video. Bye!